Good morning, everyone, here in the room and on Zoom. I'm Tom Bailey, and I've been a student and Sangha member here at Dharma Field coming up on 11 years. And I'm happy to have the chance to talk to you this morning. I got up and saw this beautiful gray sky on a morning after a fresh snow, and I find that these kinds of mornings always encourage me to stay in, not to go out. And then I like it when it turns sunny in the afternoon, because I think it's warm, even though it probably won't be. It encourages me to go out. But I am here, and I'm glad I'm here. It's the first time I've had a chance to speak on a Sunday. And I'm talking about something that interests me quite a lot. This morning, what I want to talk about, and by the way, every once in a while I'll have a cramping foot, so you'll see me jump up and try to give it a stretch and then get it back out down on my bench. I also want to comment that I'm coming off of a 5-day cold, and I did take a quick test yesterday to confirm I do not have COVID. But I must admit, the peskiness of this cold made me wonder. So this morning, what I want to talk about is a book that I received as a gift this last summer. The book is Most Intimate, a Zen Approach to Life's Challenges by Roshi Pat Enkyo O'Hara. And she is the founder and abbot of the village Zendo, which is in the Soho district of Manhattan. By way of background, I was in Manhattan for 5 weeks this summer. My brother, who has a place there, was going to be gone the last week of June and all of July. And he was on holiday with friends outside the city. So he invited me to stay in his place that entire time while he was away. So I could really feel what it was like to live day to day in the big city of Manhattan and experience all that the city has to offer, both good and bad. Now, for me, the experience of how it would be like to actually live in New York, I felt I really needed to find a Zendo that I could do Zazen at, either by Zoom or in person, so I could just have that experience, because that's how I live my day life in Minneapolis. So I searched for a Soto Zen Meditation Center and came across the Village Zendo. And that's located in the heart of Soho. And look at this. And then they were only offering Zoom Zazen, but I thought that's fine. And then the day I arrived in New York, that I learned that the Village Zendo had opened itself up to in-person sitting as well the very day before. So the day after I arrived, I was able to go to the Zendo and sit Zazen with about 10 or 12 other people who were regulars, as I became a regular. We sat every day, Monday through Thursday, morning or afternoon, morning or evening, a couple of sittings in each session, and or each day part. And it was just absolutely wonderful to be sitting with people again. I hadn't sat with people for over a year. And in that year, I did a talk on this, I actually enjoyed sitting alone at home, which I'd never done, but it was really great to get back with people. And then the other thing about these people is that they're New Yorkers. So they actually have some interest in what you're doing, and they certainly have a point of view on what you're doing. Is that a good thing to do? Is that a bad thing to do? And how could you change it so it would be a better thing to do? I loved all that. It was great. And like I said, it was a great turn of events after sitting alone for all these years. And what I realized is how important it is to be in the presence of others, to support my practice and to be supporting others in the practice. And on the last day I was there, which was the day I left, Enkyo O'Hara Roshi gave me this book as a gift, which I thought was a very nice thing to do. I'd never heard of it. I didn't even actually realize she wrote books. And I was eager to read it and very pleased when I did. Most Intimate focuses on the teachings of the not knowing is most intimate koan from the Book of Serenity. And then it uses those teachings to discuss how to meet a wide range of challenges in life, really for O'Hara to describe how she met challenges in her life based on the teachings in that koan. So first I want to be talking about the teachings of the koan, and then I will discuss how O'Hara used those teachings to deal with a particular instance, a particular challenge in her life. And it was an instance of unresolved anger that she suffered from for years. So turning to the koan, not knowing is most intimate, which is case 20 in the Book of Serenity, it reads, Dijon, a Zen monk, sees that his fellow monk and friend, Feyan, is dressed to leave the monastery. Dijon asks Feyan, where are you going from here? Feyan says, I'm going on pilgrimage. Dijon responds, what sort of thing is pilgrimage? And Feyan replies, I don't know. Dijon nods and says, not knowing is most intimate. Whereupon Feyan suddenly had a great awakening. Now, there's sort of an analysis of the koan at the end of this, but I'm going to go through what O'Hara has to say in her discussion of the koan before we get to the end. She begins her discussion by addressing what is intimacy in this koan. And this is what she has to say. At the heart of Zazen is Zazen meditation. When we sit in meditation, we can discover a way of being that is very different from our typical interactions with the world. For the period of time that we sit, we agree with ourselves to quiet the familiar internal chatter that goes on most of the time. We sit so that we discover in ourselves this capability for stillness, for intimacy with oneself. We can uncover the heart. The process of stilling the mind and opening the heart brings a great feeling of ease. When we can actually feel what we are feeling, experience what we are experiencing, and recognize what we are thinking, then we become intimate with ourselves. This intimacy is a closeness, a quality of interiority, a nearness. To be intimate with yourself is to be so attuned to your own feeling state and mind state and perception state that nothing is hidden. Your whole being is available to your life. In this intimacy with self, we begin to recognize the habits of thinking that stop us from confidently and generously and vigorously living. So here the intimacy that O'Hara's talking about, Zazen fostering, is intimacy of oneself. And as she says at the end, we have a thinking mind, and it actually gets in the way of us living our life directly and clearly in relationship to the Buddha Dharma. So then she goes on to discuss how Zazen, the practice of Zen, actually illuminates the nature of this habit of thinking that stops us from living confidently, generously, and vigorously. She says, Zen is a way of being in touch with our wholeness, ourself without the overlay of what may have crept into our history, without the stories we make up about our life, without the defensiveness or delusions that we have built up to protect ourselves. Too often, what we consciously or unconsciously use as protection can be a frame through which we view all of life. It is a distorted frame. It's a prison, actually. And in that prison, it is very difficult to function from the heart or even to find the heart. Then the other aspect of intimacy, these aren't different intimacies, by the way, this is intimacy. And she first addresses it in terms of the self, and then she addresses it in terms of reality, of truth. By clearing the space in our mind, we open our life to appreciation and confidence in whatever shows up. Zen literally means meditation, profound stillness, a quality of awareness of mind, but a quality that also carries an element of heart. Zen meditation, which we may wrongly associate with a kind of passivity or inaction, signifies a consciousness of mind and heart together. It implies an active, vital engagement in life as we meet it. So much of Zen is about making space in our heart mind so that we can live a life that is direct and clear. Our life is open and allows reality to enter. When a flower comes, it is accepted as a flower. When a dark cloud comes, it is accepted as a dark cloud. There is no denial or grasping. There is recognition. So intimacy is intimacy with the self and how it gets caught up in delusions, which obscures reality. And it's intimacy with reality, with life as it is, which intimacy can help you perhaps recognize your delusions and not get caught up in them. Then O'Hara addresses not knowing. What does not knowing mean, she asks. Speaking for myself, I generally desperately want to know. On a certain level, I want to know everything about everything. But that desire can be much more than curiosity. It can also be a need to control and verify what we already know. These days, this book was written in 2014, and casting our minds back, it was a troubled horizon already then. There was trouble on the horizon already then. These days, we see the result of too much certainty and too little open-minded curiosity. How often have we thought we knew what someone meant when he or she said or did something, only to learn later that we were mistaken? How many relationships has such knowing before investigation harmed? What gets in the way of our spaciousness? What gets in the way of our not knowing? What gets in the way of our experiencing each moment, of our being curious and interested in the possibilities that arise? Isn't it our ideas about what should be, of what spirituality should be, of what should be happening to us, what should be happening to our friends, what should be happening in the world? It is as if we have some superior view of life. But it doesn't have to be like this. We can free ourselves of this arrogant, troubling habit. And then she concludes, so I remind myself often, just don't know. Just have that don't know mind. Don't always try to be so smart. We don't have to believe our every thought and doubt. We can allow them to be there, but we don't have to believe them. We don't have to stick to them. We can investigate them, and we can just not know. No, I thought this was a really interesting reading about not knowing. O'Hara, of course, points out that our preconceived ideas get in the way of our not knowing, get in the way of our seeing reality. And then she immediately points out how common it is for us to willfully do this, to willfully rely on our preconceived ideas when it is important for us to know something that supports our point of view on how something should be handled. And she's talking to Zen practitioners. She's talking about Zen practitioners. She identifies this as an arrogant, troubling habit of holding a superior view of life. And she talks about this as a superior view of spiritual life, which we then rely on to determine what should be happening to us and to our friends and to the world. To address this, O'Hara exhorts us to arouse just don't know mind. When we see that we are fabricating a story or building some other defense to protect ourselves from the actions and ideas that we find threatening. O'Hara's point here reminded me of an informal talk by Dogen recorded in Sumunki, a collection of informal talks that he gave to his monks on how to properly conduct themselves in various circumstances. It's talk 120, and what Dogen says, Dogen tells his monks that when faced with a challenging situation, they should arouse Bodhi mind and consider what is best for both the Buddha way and the benefit of others in each situation. And he further remarks, you don't know what's going on. You don't have time to go run and look at a teaching on this issue when something arises. And actually, you can't read the future, so you don't really know what's going to happen. So this is what you do. You arouse Bodhi mind and you do the best you can. And the measure is the Buddha way. The measure is the benefit for others. So like Dogen, O'Hara's teaching points away from any kind of rules and regulations on what to do in responding to specific challenging situations. And it instead points to, like Dogen, a state of mind. In this case, just don't know mind. And she's talking about this koan. Not knowing is most intimate. So she points to this state of don't know mind that avoids reference to one's superior view of life to guide one in the right direction when addressing a situation that has arisen. No, I'd like to turn now. I'd like to turn to a discussion of the koan. But before that, I want to share Suzuki Roshi's teaching on not knowing. And it's from Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. He talks about not knowing in different terms O'Hara uses, in terms of emptiness and naturalness. And I think this approach is particularly helpful in working with the not knowing is most intimate koan. Now, in the section of Zen Mind and Beginner's Mind that I'm going to be reading from, Suzuki uses the word nothingness for emptiness. The nothingness he is talking about is the emptiness of everything and anything that arises. And that's clear from a section of this talk, before the section I'm about to read, when she makes that point. So Suzuki says, without nothingness, again, emptiness, without nothingness, there is no naturalness, no true being. One being comes out of nothing. Our being comes out of nothingness, moment after moment. Nothingness is always there, and from it, everything appears. But usually, forgetting all about nothingness, you behave as if you have something. What you do is based on some possessive idea or some concrete idea, and that is not natural. For instance, when you listen to a lecture, you should not have any idea of yourself. You should not have your own idea when you listen to someone. Forget what you have in your mind and just listen to what the speaker says. To have nothing in your mind is naturalness. Then you will understand what the speaker is saying. But if you have some idea to compare with what he says, you will not hear everything. Your hearing will be one-sided, and that is not naturalness. If you want to study Zen, you should forget all your previous ideas and just practice Zen and see what kind of experience you have in your practice. We have no ideas. We sit Zazen. We have this experience. It teaches us. What does it teach us? That's naturalness. That's the naturalness of our practice. So not knowing mind is naturalness. It is not having any idea of yourself. It is forgetting your previous ideas. Indeed, it is forgetting all ideas that you hold in your mind. Naturalness allows you to fully experience what is arising rather than missing something because you remain one-sided in how you're experiencing what's going on. Naturalness, this not knowing, is, Suzuki says, one's true being. In this state, one's intimate with reality, one's intimate with oneself. So now for turning to the koan, when Feyan says he's going on a pilgrimage, Dijon asks, what sort of thing is pilgrimage? It seems to be a straightforward question. I looked up pilgrimage, and actually there are a ton of definitions, but they were being very specific. Generally, a pilgrimage is recognized as a spiritual quest. And this quest can be a journey to a sacred place. It can be going somewhere specific. Or it can be a journey or a search for new meaning or expanded meaning. And that meaning can be about oneself, others, human life, nature, a higher good, or a higher power. But Feyan doesn't give any explanation of what pilgrimage is. Rather, he says he doesn't know. And it's not until Dijon says, quote, not knowing is most intimate, that Feyan has his great awakening. It is only after Dijon speaks that Feyan understands that to not know what sort of thing pilgrimage is, that is, to be in a state of mind where Feyan holds no views about the nature or the outcome of pilgrimage, that is to be in a state that is most intimate with seeing reality and most intimate with seeing oneself. Because one is seeing one's delusions, and one has the ability to avoid being snagged, trapped by those, and to experience reality directly. Now, O'Hara's book is not about her moving through life in the state of mind. Rather, it's about her struggling to appropriately take care of difficult problems with one-sided ideas abounding right and left. Not only one-sided views of others, but also her own troubling habit of relying on a superior view of life, a superior view of the situation in front of her, to navigate conflicts with others and then conflicts within herself. It is about her struggling to maintain intimacy with herself, intimacy with her delusions, and her struggles to rouse not knowing mind, to help her determine what is the best course of action in a particular situation, consistent with the Buddha Dharma. So leaving the koan behind, what I'd like to do, second half of my talk, actually the second third or quarter of my talk, will be a discussion of one of the many examples of her Zen approach to life's challenges. Now, the challenges in the book, there's a lot. Include dealing with disease, suffering, dying and death, all of which were at the center of her life's work, which was working with AIDS patients and working with drug addicts. She also writes about dealing with challenges that are just typical of everyday life that just arise at any particular time, like anger, which is the one I want to talk about today. Like anger, as well as fractured relationships, both emotional and physical, stress, loss, peace, getting it, not getting it, joy, having it, losing it. The challenge I will be talking about deals with unresolved anger O'Hara was holding on to with respect to a teacher of hers. But before getting to that, I want to talk about a couple of general observations O'Hara lays out about dealing with the challenges of life. First, she says, if we are truly intimate with ourselves, we can be intimate with everyone else and with every situation that arises. And she goes on to explain, we can't really have an intimate mind, a mind that hides nothing, if we're actually hiding from ourselves. An intimate mind requires nothing less than a wholehearted, extreme commitment to waking up to ourselves, moment to moment, sensation by sensation, to allowing ourselves to be awake, to be aware of what we are experiencing no matter how painful or uncomfortable or embarrassing it might be. And the stories very often deal with her being in pain and discomfort and embarrassed about it all. The second observation is that Zazen teaches us the power of restraint. The very act of Zazen teaches us the power of restraint, which opens us up to appreciate whatever shows up in our life and then respond to it confidently. And this is how it comes about. She says, your meditation practice can show you how helpful the practice of restraint can be. You sit on the cushion, and particularly in Zen, you don't move. If you're uncomfortable, you remain sitting still with the you remain sitting still with the discomfort for the entire sitting period. You do not move. You don't get up after 5 minutes just because you have an odd thought. You stay with it and see what happens. When we hold still, we create a field of clarity for ourselves. We learn restraint. Yes, there are parts of ourselves that resist that clarity, and then the body jumps into movement to cloud the field. We scratch our nose. We rearrange our limbs, and we shift our attention. And in doing that, we miss the moment of holding still, of clarity and readiness. She talks about how it's really many years of practice, at least for her, to realize the benefits of restraint. She says, the restraint of holding still allows one to enter a state of presence and intimacy that one would not get to otherwise. Restraint can be the key to compassion and skillful action. When we're ready to do something really unskillful, suddenly a little shadow of awareness can come up in our minds, and we don't abuse. We don't yell. We don't grasp. We just stay still. And in that moment of restraint, we can discover our own strength, our own integrity to act skillfully and compassionately. Now, turning to her challenge of unresolved anger, O'Hara begins by observing that Zen has a long tradition of investigating the mind of anger. In his words on the precept of not indulging in anger, Dogen counseled, and this is, I'm quoting here, not advancing, not retreating, not real, not empty. There is an ocean of bright clouds. There is an ocean of solemn clouds. So he's talking about the precept of not indulging in anger, and I'm going to read this again. Not advancing, not retreating, not real, not empty. There is an ocean of bright clouds. There is an ocean of solemn clouds. O'Hara's interpretation of this counsel by Dogen is that by not advancing, we stay with the feeling and sensation we are having. We do not jump into action. We take a breath and give our mind a chance to catch up with our feelings. By not retreating, we stay in the midst of what has come up. We do not hide. We do not stuff our feelings. Not real nor empty refers to the energy of anger being like a strong wind. This is a feeling. And our feelings, they're real in the sense that they are constantly changing impulses that rise and fall. However, they are not empty in the sense that they do have a strong effect on us. Thinking prompts us to do things and say things. Feelings of anger, she concludes, presents to us just as all other thoughts and feelings, continuously shifting between the bright clouds and the solemn clouds in the sky of our life. O'Hara says that through practice, we can come to recognize our anger when it arises. We could feel it in our body, and yet we are not its victims. We are neither advancing nor retreating. Instead, we are acting appropriately to the situation. We are intimate with our feelings and the situation that gives rise to them. And O'Hara then quotes a Chinese poem that is seen as evoking this way of handling anger. When the wind blows through the bamboo grove, the trunks clatter against one another. When the wind has passed, the grove is quiet once more. That, O'Hara says, is how anger can be an authentic part of our lives. It does not have to be an abiding thing. It is a signal that something is amiss. How can we respond to it? As long as we've not anchored ourselves in hatred or aversion, it can blow through. But it took O'Hara years to come to this understanding. And then she starts her story. She explains that the suffering that she endured from unresolved anger arose out of a strong disagreement she had with a spiritual teacher that she'd been studying with for many years. The disagreement was an escalation of differences of opinion, leading to little slights that grew to what she felt was shunning. He was shunning her. Finally, she felt it necessary to leave and find another teacher and community. And she said she experienced a deep sense of loss, of not being understood, and of not being respected. And this was all very difficult because O'Hara was extremely angry with her teacher, while at the same time she thought, well, I don't want to be angry. I want to be, how did she put it? I want to be kind and good-hearted about this person. But she was angry and she was hurt. And these feelings stayed with her for years. Anytime anybody would mention this person or the former community, a fire would envelop her. She writes, it would lick up at my ears. She would try her best not to say something mean-spirited, but she failed many times, describing how nasty little remarks came flying out of my mouth. So what did she do after several years of this? Well, she continued to spend a lot of time trying to come to terms with her anger over her teacher's behavior towards her. A lot of time was years, in fact. She questioned her. This is how she decided. I questioned my anger, experienced it, dropped it, picked it up again. It would fall away and be gone. Then all of a sudden, something would be said or would just pop up in the middle of my meditation, and my anger would lash out all over again. But during this long time, this long period, this year-long period of sitting with her anger, she said she felt strongly supported by Dogen's counsel regarding anger. It strengthened her resolve to get to that place where she no longer experienced the dark clouds of the sadness and the hurt, and experienced the bright clouds of letting the anger pass. O'Hara says she finally came to the point where she asked herself what her anger really was about. You'd think you'd know. What did her anger want, is how she puts it. What did she need that made her want to feel angry again and again? What was it that she needed that she didn't have that made her want to feel angry over and over again? And through this questioning, she realized what she really wanted was to be acknowledged as a sincere practitioner, and that she needed to give herself that acknowledgement. So she started saying to herself, you are really a wholehearted Dharma student. You are really giving it all, your all, and I really appreciate you. And through this practice, this self-affirmation of addressing the sincerity of her, acknowledging the sincerity of her practice, this underlying need of hers was met, and her anger was transformed into what she refers to as free energy that she could use to take care of herself. Now, there's a couple of observations I want to make about O'Hara's very frank story about her anger with her teacher. First, the years that it took her to realize that what her anger was actually about, what was needed to make it go away and stay away, underscores how difficult anger can be to deal with. When you look at the anger for the trigger and stay there, where was I? What was done? What did she say? What did he say? What was everybody's reaction to that? When you stay there at the triggers, you're missing altogether what's going on. Anger obscures the underlying afflictive emotion that triggers the anger in the first place. That's fear, it's sadness, or it's guilt, or it's shame, or it's just pain. In this case, I think the underlying afflictive emotion triggered by her teacher's differences of opinion with her, his little slights, his apparent shunning of her, was O'Hara's fear, sadness, guilt, shame, or pain of believing that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't being a sincere practitioner. And O'Hara finally recognized that she had to address that to move past her anger. My second observation is that her response to the challenge of her anger about her teacher shows O'Hara being wholeheartedly committing to being intimate with herself. I mean, she did this for years and did a lot of internal reviewing, trying to understand what was going on before she could get to that intimate place with herself to actually recognize what was driving this failure to resolve this issue. And then finally, I think her response clearly shows relentless reliance on don't know mind. I mean, it's just a different side of the coin, right? You're intimate with yourself, really truly intimate you're with yourself, but perforce you are with reality, perforce you are with your delusions. And that means that you're going to actually have been employing a don't know mind, a mind that doesn't use a lot of preconceived ideas to obscure your ability to be intimate. So I think she did both of those things here. And I just thought this was just a really compelling example of not knowing being most intimate and very difficult. And with that, it ends my prepared remarks. And I don't know if I have, and I'll invite any questions or comments that you may have.
First of all, what was the title of the book?
It's Most Intimate, a Zen approach to life's challenges.
Okay.
And her last name is O'Hara.
Okay. And then, I just now when we were talking about when she finally gave herself credit of being an authentic practitioner.
Yeah.
What about the precept of not praising self? I've always been kind of, so where she gave herself credit, was that praising self?
I guess I don't react to it that way, to be honest with you. Dogen, in his discussion in 120 of Arousing Bodhi Mind, is you are sincere practitioners. And sincere practitioners rouse Bodhi mind and look at a situation in terms of what's the best conduct or actions to take in light of the Buddha way and in light of our acting for the benefit of all beings. So I think what she was doing was not reaching out to praise herself. I haven't put together the timeline, but she's been practicing since the 80s. And this book is written in 2014. And she has a very long career of working internationally and nationally on AIDS and and with drug addiction, and it still works in the area of drug addiction and with the peace movement, various peace movements. So I think, I was talking to Toku Scott about this. I'd read this book and we were having coffee, so I'm really excited. And she said it reminded her of a teaching that she got from him, that she heard, which was, we have to learn to tell ourselves our own secrets. And her secret was, I don't really believe I'm a sincere practitioner. I don't really believe it was undeserved what happened to me. And so she just needed to become intimate with that and then arouse her don't know mind, as the structure is a little wonky, I'll grant you, when you try to play it. But just to follow the koan, she needed to become intimate with herself, with reality. And she needed to employ her don't know mind, and she needed to affirm what she was doing. She was just affirming what she was doing. I am a sincere practitioner. I do mean to be a sincere practitioner, I am. So that's how I react to that. Yeah.
So it kind of reminds me of a teaching that I've heard a number of times that talks about Bodhisattva and talks about compassion and says, in order for us to be compassionate with others, we have to first be compassionate with ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've heard in what you're doing, because if she was actually being compassionate with herself, recognizing the truth inside of her, and then being compassionate with them, being gentle with them.
Right.
Because we cannot be compassionate with others unless we are first compassionate with ourselves.
Yeah, so let me go back to this, because that's a very good point. Carol, she says we can't really have an intimate mind, a mind that hides nothing, if we're actually hiding from ourselves. An intimate mind requires nothing less than a wholehearted, extreme commitment to waking up to ourselves, moment to moment, sensation by sensation, to allowing ourselves to be aware of what we are experiencing, no matter how painful or uncomfortable or embarrassing it might be. I suspect that this is at the heart of all effective therapy, right? I mean, I don't know, but yeah, Nancy.
This helps me get a greater meaning of Buddha's last teaching, be a light unto yourself. Take no external refuge.
Right.
That's
right. Yeah, investigate. Yeah. Examine your own experience. And through that, and again, we do it in Zazen. None of this, all of the examples that are given, Suzuki's and O'Hara's that I've discussed, all of these arise in Zazen. But we're not always sitting Zazen, right? It's sitting Zazen this and sitting Zazen that. But we get off the mat and it can go kaplooey. And so that's part of her. Phaon was there when he heard the words, so he had his awakening. We could be out in the world and fighting to figure out what those words mean, because we're distracted by our delusions. And so what she was talking about was just how to stay with your anger. Again, not retreat from it, but then not to advance it, and then hope that you can move through it. Hi, Mary.
Thank you for your talk. So having failed once again today, practice what I preach. As I talked about last week, having a very difficult day, succumbing to all my negative emotions. This, what she talks about, not advancing and not retreating, I think goes beyond even being a good therapist to yourself. I don't think Zen is all about being a good therapist to yourself. And I'm sorry if I'm being obnoxious, but as I say, I don't always practice my language. And I'm a lousy therapist to myself, let me just say that. This non-advancing, non-retreating, I just points to the emptiness that I think is lacking in her discussion. And it may not be, but I don't hear it. The emptiness of the anger and the despair and the depression and the anxiety that we all experience. And it really is empty in the sense of it doesn't last. So this idea of not advancing and not retreating, I think points to that emptiness. And I'm coming from a place where I'm feeling absolutely miserable this morning.
Okay.
And so I also am reminded of what Norm said to me in a phone conversation when Steve says, just take one step at a time, just let it all pass through. And, affirmations are fine, but you can be stuck there. You can be stuck telling yourself, I'm a great practitioner. I guess I would have to say, just let it go. I have to let go what David says to me, because I annoy the crap out of it, and he responds when I annoy the crap out of it. I have to just let it go. And I'm sorry, but I'm to the point where at this point, it's difficult for me to be anything but completely honest about what I see as my failing to practice what I preach.
Yeah,
So, but I feel that there is this, having spent 6 weeks on Hong Kong and really being impressed by it, I would have to say that an acknowledgement of just the emptiness, the absolute truth of how we live is somewhat lacking from that, but maybe not. Maybe she just hadn't incorporated it.
Okay.
And I'll shut up.
Would you like to, would I be over irritating you by responding? Okay. I was shocked by her use of an affirmation. I immediately went to SNL. I'm smart enough. I'm good looking enough. People like me, whatever it is, right? But I was set up for this. She talks about knowing yourself well enough that you endure discomfort and embarrassment. What she was talking about in not advancing and not retreating is just Dogen's words. What did he mean when he said anger arises? Not advancing, not retreating, not real, not empty. There is an ocean of bright clouds. There is an ocean of solemn clouds. I think she was just trying to ground what she had to say around that and interpreting what does it mean not to advance? What does it mean not to retreat? And I think her answer was, advancing is don't make it worse, and retreating is don't deny it. And as far as it being not real, not empty, of course it's not real. It's empty, but it's not empty because you're bouncing off the walls based on that. And this is, again, it's a challenge of life. Reality shows up loaded with delusion and confusion about what's really going on and how to deal with it. And this is her book is a way of sorting things out in this messy world. She has this wonderful thing about this Hindu story about there's a war between angry spirits and the gods, and the angry spirits win. I think this is Hindu. And so they're banished. And so where do they go? They go to lotus flowers. And they go to the spot in a lotus flower, which is just below the surface of the water, where they can carry on their war. That's the point just before you get to enlightenment, right? You're out of the water, you're out of the muddy water, and now you're above and you're with the lotus, and it's nirvana, right? And the angry spirits are there, and their job is to prevent you from getting there. And I think, again, all she's talking about is these feelings bubble up, and they're powerful. And with her, I think another really embarrassing thing Mary, is it took years for her to really understand. It's not about what he did. It's about how I think about myself.
I understand.
Yeah.
I heard it.
Yeah.
Big difference.
And so that this sitting with it, not advancing it as in coming up with stories and just focusing all the time on him, but just sitting with it and saying, why is it not going away? Why is it not going away? What is it? What does it want? Because that's what the years were. They were not sharpening the story and creating a hard edge of hate, hard edge of aversion. I mean, she talks about not doing that. It was just like, what the heck? So.
At the beginning, early on, I kind of got caught up in my own mind. There was this line about the difference between about passive versus active, and relying on a teacher versus not relying on a teacher to tell you what to do. I was kind of caught up in that, and then you got to that line that sort of said, "It's not all that go when somebody's talking and listening." And I was like, yeah, that's what I need to do. You need to But then going back to the end, it's like I'm not sure if it's a question. I guess in terms of for somebody in that situation of restraint, at what point is the default then really not action as opposed to maybe, or the default that would lead you to, as opposed to action meaning maybe the right action is to address the teacher or reject the teacher, at some point. And that leads you there.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so there was a lot there. So it's Suzuki's talking about it was Suzuki that was talking about, not having a one-sided approach, but actually hearing everything that's going on, not having your own perspective on things before they arise, right? So that distorts what arises. And as far as the restraint issue, she said, I thought it got to the point where I had to leave. And she thought, I shouldn't be angry. I should be kind about him now that I've left. And she thought, and I shouldn't say mean things about him. And I shouldn't have this anger. If I can't be kind about him, I shouldn't have this anger. And you ask, well, when is it time to take action? Well, it's a really long time for her to take action. She couldn't sort it out. And then she says, without any reference to her quality as a sincere practitioner, boom, that's the issue. And by the way, she's written this so that you don't, I think we all know who this person is if we know her life, but the general reader wouldn't be able to know. And there's a lot that she doesn't write about. We don't really know what happened. He may have said it specifically right. But the way this story unfolds is there's a lot of anger, and I'm not getting to the bottom of it. But when she does, for us, the readers, it's surprising. It's surprising because it feels like a secret she kept from herself that she finally understood. I don't know if that's helpful, Ron.
No, thank you. I guess I was looking at more in terms of the general. As opposed to
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think when we get to the general, we get to we can't say, right? There's no rules and regulations for when we have a general situation in front of us. We just, what is consistent with the way? What is the most benefit for realizing the way? What is the most benefit for all beings? That's generally what that's what Dogen says. I don't know what the time is.
It's right there.
Oh, okay. So we're kind of sort of near the end. I don't want to cut anyone off, but so thank you, everyone. Appreciate you coming in here, listening. Appreciate everybody tuning in on Zoom. Thank you.